Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the joint UCT Stellenbosch University REDCap Africa Day. I am thrilled to have my friend Paul Harris here. For those who don't know, I only arrived, I'm David Tabb. I arrived at Stellenbosch University December 1st from Vanderbilt. So to know that a member of my own department was coming back here for a visit was really exciting to me. He was visiting Johannesburg, but we found that we could steal just a little bit of time and fly him down here last night and fly him back out this afternoon to Johannesburg to start his long trek home. So thank you. I know how stressful adding a dog leg to an already long trip can be. So Paul is a great human being, first off. Helped me through a time that was probably the lowest in my life. He's a gentleman as well as a scholar. And I think one of the factors that makes him a really remarkable academic is the fact that he worked in the industrial world as an engineer for a fair amount of time before coming back to complete his PhD in mechanical engineering and then later joining our department as first a research associate professor and then as an associate professor, correct? Have they promoted you to professor yet?
Yeah.
There you go. Full professor Paul Harris. So I'm really thrilled that he could come here to talk to us today. Many people in the world make use of his software and may never know his name. And with Paul, that seems to be just fine because he's that humble sort of fellow. But without further ado, I'm going to bring him up here. Let's all have a hand for it. Paul.
So, thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here, and it's also quite humbling. So I appreciate the opportunity, the efforts of Dave, Chris, and many others that made this possible. And honestly, it's not stressful at all to do this dog leg because this is what I like to do. So thanks very much. So today, in the time that we have available, what I thought I would do would be to talk about REDCap, what's old, what's new, and then a little bit of what's next. So I realized that, so if you've ever used REDCap, just so I have a point of reference, if you've ever used it, could you just give a quick raise of your hands? Okay. So a lot of people have, a lot of people haven't, and so I'm a little bit relieved because I guessed right. So I think giving a little bit of the history will give you kind of a feel for some of the why it does what it does and why it doesn't do what it doesn't. And then, REDCap is one of those platforms that we're developing it rapidly. We push out, we try to push out a new feature set once a month, and with that, even if you used REDCap last year, you may not know some of the newer functionality. So I often give the same type of, I usually do a what's new and what's next at Vanderbilt for the faculty and staff. So at any time, please stop me. Keep it very informal and just stop me and ask a question or point out something that I might miss or that you're wondering about. Again, I want to thank both Dave and Chris and also the REDCap teams from both universities. And I have to tell you that I've seen REDCap, I'll talk a little bit about the consortium in a few moments. But I've seen REDCap do extremely well at institutions, and I've seen REDCap do not so well at institutions. And the real difference is the folks on the ground. At the bottom of my screen here represent the folks here. But it's really the local support team and the training team that make the difference. Otherwise, it's just a piece of software. So I also want to make sure that I thank each of you. I know that you are busy and you could be doing a lot of stuff on your Friday morning. It's Friday, right? Friday morning. So thanks for making an effort to be here. Once I start talking, I get too excited and I'll talk too long, and I hope you'll keep me honest on this. But because of that, I want to thank my team up front rather than at the end. I have a great team of folks. These folks are working projects, REDCap plus a whole lot of other projects. They do a lot of integration, and I think it's really no disrespect to anybody here, but I think this is the best team on earth, and I really appreciate all that they do. So my role at Vanderbilt is the director of the Office of Research Informatics. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail on this slide. I'll tell you what I tell my mother that I do. My mother, and you may get this as well, but every time someone asks me what I do, I just kind of give them a flippant answer. Well, I work in research. And then they say, oh, really, what disease are you curing? And then I have to really disappoint them and say, well, none. But what I do is I wake up in the morning and I look across Vanderbilt at the whole research enterprise, and I try to find things that are generalizable needs that can be solved with informatics. So if we can, if we can use it for autism and Parkinson's and maybe even zebrafish, and there's sort of this generalized need for informatics tools, and if we had them, we could do more discovery, or we could do studies better, cheaper, faster. Then that falls into what I'm sort of charged to think about. So there's a lot of pieces there. I guess the one thing I'll point out, because it's going to come up later in the slides anyway, is the sort of the big data. And big data, I know, is a relative term here. When I'm talking about big data, it's more of the the clinical information systems and having those sort of leveraged for research. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along, and sort of how we've used sort of the fact that I have a team over here doing that and a team over here doing REDCap to sort of build some pipelines in, which is kind of exciting. The bottom piece there is just to remind me that it's bench to bedside to community and back. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. We're going to be talking today about one very special generalizable need. As Dave mentioned, before I got into biomedical engineering and then informatics, I was a mechanical engineer. And across industry, academia, regardless of discipline, I don't think I've ever done anything that didn't involve data. And being able to sort of capture, being able to sort of manage and deal with data is a big problem that's very generalizable, of course. And so this was actually the first problem that we attacked in a big way. So history of REDCap starts in 2004. In 2004, just as a reminder, that's been a long time ago now. But things happening in 2004 would be my favorite baseball team in the U.S. They were busy breaking curses and winning the World Series finally. There was a guy named Mark that was working on this computer program. Maybe you've heard of Facebook. There was a new statue erected in Johannesburg. The swimming team from Australia won a gold, and Lance Armstrong was still riding a bicycle. So there was a lot of stuff going on in 2004. The most relevant to this talk is that thing way down in the right-hand corner. It was a new set of rules and regulations that were about to hit the U.S. if you were collecting and working with electronic data. It's called HIPAA. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It started out as sort of a privacy thing, but then the security rules were coming online fast. And basically the deal was, if you're going to be keeping and storing and working with data with patient identifiers, you wanted to have some controls there. Audit trails, basically keeping up with who was doing what to the data at all times, who was seeing the data, et cetera. I think the equivalent rule set here is called POPI. Is that correct? Do you guys know POPI? Am I right, those that know both? Okay. So at Vanderbilt, at least, I remember very well, it was every system that we were working with. We were supposed to go around and sort of document whether we were, whether we weren't, and where the gaps were in terms of adherence to these new HIPAA rules. And I remember very well, it was a blue sheet of paper that we were supposed to fill out. I was filling that piece of paper out for our gap analysis for all kinds of systems that we were using in the research enterprise. But I just kept thinking about the fact that this is so ridiculous, that we're dealing with this at the systems level, but we're not dealing with it at the individual project level. I mean, at that time, this is crazy. But I remember somebody from another university emailing me an HIV database, unprotected, had identifiers in it and so forth. So this was not just a set of rules that we needed to comply with. This is really what we needed to do, whether somebody was telling us to do that or not. So, but, you know, we had a huge gap. I developed software at the time, and I did it one at a time. So, you know, if you wanted sort of a research database for your project, you had to become my best friend or a collaborator. And so I'm looking at this HIPAA stuff, and I'm thinking, man, I don't even know how to build HIPAA-compliant access databases or FileMaker Pros or you know much less Excel files and so forth, because we can't get to the audit trail level. So we had a big problem. Thousands of projects, one of me at the time, that, you know, and I just couldn't be the best friend to that many people. So the deal was we you know, kind of looked at it and realized that people weren't disobeying HIPAA because they necessarily wanted to go rogue. Our researchers were not doing best practices because there were just no good options. So the hypothesis was that, you know, if we could give people an easy way to do the right thing, and it was easier to do the right thing than it was to do the wrong thing, to use the Survey Monkey or the you know, have a developer on their team maybe build out an access database that they probably would. If we could make this right, then we could sort of move people back out of our lab does everything into a centralized model. But it had to be easier than not doing it. It had to sort of satisfy their needs first, because they didn't care about HIPAA yet. They would, but they didn't care about it yet. And it needed to be extremely diverse. You know, it needed to work for any project, really for any purpose. So, you know, from a programming standpoint, just the dilemma is, you know, even if we had all of the money, it would be almost impossible to hire all of the programmers needed to sort of comply with this one at a time. So the solution was, you know, if we could get to do a metadata approach. So if we could, and metadata means data about the data. But, you know, basically the idea was if I could sort of represent the data requirements for a single project or a single study or a single trial in a, you know, structured database table, an Excel file, if you will. If I could represent this study that way, and then if I could have this program looking at that table when this project is in context, and just kind of remorph to become, you know, customized for that project, then I could write the software in one time, and we just sort of ship in and out the different, you know, project level data dictionaries or metadata to sort of support the whole enterprise. The great thing was, you know, I could stay busy writing programming one time, and we could sort of let the teams sort of think about the data dictionaries, and therefore, you know, I could keep improving product for everyone. So you know, basically it worked like this. I'll show you a few screens. Started with sort of the representing of that metadata, and it was literally done in an Excel file at the time. Since then, you could still do the project definition in Excel, but we also have some really nice point-and-click tools. But basically, what I did was I built first a very, you know, pretty rudimentary system where we had the audit trails, where we had export features, and where we had sort of you know, what was probably most exciting to the data coordinators, we had an input screen that would kind of morph to meet your study. Once I got enough of it working, I started selling it. You know, not selling it for money, but selling it to the folks that were doing research, and it really was a sales pitch. I mean, I had it down pat. I guarantee you could have woken me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and shook me awake and started me, you know, about 2/3 down the sales pitch, and I could have finished it for you, probably on my way back to sleep. So I met with research team after research team, saying basically, you know, hey, let me hear a little bit about your study. Let me tell you about this new thing that we've got here, and look, here it is working, and you know, it has, you know, the great thing about it is it has all of these tools that you're going to need anyway. Your coordinators are going to love it. You know, look, it doesn't look like a database. It's got human readable labels. It has pull-down menus, and you get to decide all of that, and I promise it's completely customizable for your project. It's free for you to use. You don't care about HIPAA right now, but I promise you will. And look over here, you know, it has audit trails. We can see who did what to your data all of the time. So I go through that whole spiel. It has export, you know, so if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, You come in and worst cases, you can get all of your data out, and if you've been using the system for entry, then you've got sort of a pristine, clean, quality control data set. So you can get it out eventually. I built in a lot of features and functions with help from our first REDCap Consortium partner, some export features into any statistical package. And because of the big data, the clinical data stuff that we were doing, also built in some de-identification stuff. So usually I'd get to the end of this 45-minute spiel, and I'd say, you interested in this? And they'd always say, yeah, well, can't do without it, Paul. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you my study forms, and if you could just get some of your folks working on that, that would be great. And I would say, nah, that's not the way this is going to work. So I promise you, you know a lot more about Parkinson's research than I do, and ever will. So if this is going to work, I need to keep developing this one set of code that's going to kind of keep evolving to meet your needs. I don't care who it is on your team. It can be the PI for the study. It could be a statistician. It could be your research coordinator. You can hire a student for all I care. You just need somebody that's going to be accountable to your group that can learn how to translate your study needs into this data dictionary. And again, this is not the way we operate it anymore, but when you're starting out, you kind of have to walk before you run. So I would say, okay, this demo that we just showed you, I'm going to give you the data dictionary for that. And I'm going to give you access. It's web-based, so I can just give you access right here. You need to go home. I'm also going to sort of clone it and give you sort of the shell of what you're going to fill out. And all I need you to do in the next 48 hours is spend 10 minutes. You spend 10 minutes making 2 data fields for me and send it back to me. And I'm going to spin up one of these instances for you. And if you don't do it in the next 48 hours, you'll forget this lesson that I just showed you. And in a few months, you're going to be really, you're going to feel really sheepish coming back and asking me for it again. So even that part, I kind of worked down into a shaming them into, surely you've got 10 minutes, right? And so they would do that. And, some people would do more, but usually people would do, about 10, 15 minutes of work. I'd flip it into one of these web-based databases, and they'd be like, man, this is great. And then they'd spend the rest of their weekend working on it. So it was just that you need to trust me that I promise a little bit of effort on your part is going to turn into something that's going to be great for you and your team. So the good news is it worked. So by the end of 2004, we launched in August 2004. And by the way, that study is still, it was kind of a neat study to start with because it's still going on. And it's still supported by REDCap. So that's always a reminder to me to tell you that even though we evolve REDCap, it always is backward compatible. So we run one version of REDCap at Vanderbilt for all of our mainline studies. And I'll show you some stats on that in a moment. But the first one went live in August, and by December of that year, we had about 20, which sounds pretty modest by today's standards. But if you've been working one project at a time, and you've had programmers working on projects for you, you know that doing 20 projects in that amount of time that are completely customized for your project or study, that was a pretty big deal. So I did an early QI survey, and it wasn't. This was before I built REDCap Survey, so it was really just an email. And I asked people, how do you like it? Is it too difficult? How difficult or how easy is the data dictionary process? What would you like to see? Those sorts of things. And people were giving me really good feedback. And I tell you that because that makes you believe the next answer. So the one thing I just added in, almost at a whim at the end, was, is it improving your science? And every single person said, it is improving my science. And I thought, man, that is phenomenal. Honestly, I got kind of big-headed about it. And I was walking around feeling great about it. And then it just sort of hit me. It's not the REDCap software that's improving their science. It's putting the control in the hands of the researchers. So if you're not worried about iterations and having to communicate with a programmer who hopefully gets it right but sometimes doesn't, who's not going to charge you if you do more iterations. We like iterations, right? Because that allows us to get it right before the first patient comes in and so forth. So that was really the power and why it improves science. Here's something that happened every time as well. So I'd be doing this sales pitch, and somebody would say, "This is really cool, Paul. Will it do this?" And sometimes I would say, "Yeah, just give me a minute. I'll show you that." But more often than not, I would say, "Nah, doesn't do that. But maybe it will." So no promises. And that's one of the things I've never promised is functionality, and we'll get to that at the end. So sometimes I think it's a good idea. Sometimes I think we can make it work. We have much smarter programmers than me who can make lots of stuff work now. But even with those guys, you know, we always underpromise and hopefully over-deliver by never saying that we're going to have a feature before it actually goes live. Because sometimes we have to roll that thinking back, and if some group has been waiting on us and they get mad at us, right? So one of the reasons I've always enjoyed giving it away, especially at Vanderbilt, is if you don't want to use it, you know, don't use it. You go do something else. And that's been sort of freeing for me in terms of stress levels. But every single time I get this, "Hey, will it do this?" And you know, about the third or fourth time I hear the same thing. I think, you know, it really should do that. So while you're out there creating your projects and your metadata and sort of spinning up the individual ones, I'll go work on this over here, and hopefully next Tuesday we'll launch that out. So really that's the way REDCap has evolved from the very beginning. It's been listening to the researchers, building for the researchers. So you know, we'll get to the consortium piece in a moment, but yeah, I don't know how many times, especially in the early days, I would have some very well-meaning computer scientist or informatician say, you know, "I'm going to join your little consortium, but here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to fix, you know, everything that you're doing wrong on the back end." And I would say, "Well, you know, that would be great, you know, but why don't you just come in and start using it first, rather than sort of making all of the, you know, making one more level of abstraction on the back end and so forth." So we've always, remember, we designed it around HIPAA and sort of doing the right thing. So I don't mean that in these comments that it was wrong. It was just not perfect on the back end from a computer science perspective. But what I focused on always was the researcher, because I knew that no matter how complex, no matter how great this program gets, and no matter how perfect it is underneath, if it's not super intuitive for the end users, the researchers, they'll go back to using, you know, those other non-standard, compliant systems. But you know, again, kind of going back to the point, I think the reason REDCap was so successful in the early days at Vanderbilt is because we had really smart people using it and telling us, you know, what should come next. The Swiss Army knife is a good reminder to me to sort of point out, and I'll probably show this later on or talk about it later on as well, that you know, I've always, you know, with that diversity, never wanted to go so deep in one area that we left certain types of research behind. So I've been criticized a lot that, you know, it's not the all-and-all perfect phase 3, phase 4 clinical trial system. But you know, my thinking is there's already phase 3, 4 clinical trial systems, and by the way, it's a really good one for that sort of thing too now. But you know, I didn't want to also leave behind the zebrafish researchers and so forth. So keeping that Swiss Army knife mentality actually has been, again, one of the strengths of REDCap, because people figure out, smart people with you know, good flexible tools, they're just amazing in terms of what they'll do with them. And that's why I'm so excited to sit down and hear about some of the work that you're doing today. So yeah, you know, one question that I got, maybe my third or fourth sales pitch to researchers was, "It's great, can I use it for my basic science studies?" And honestly, up until that point, I had thought about only the fact that, you know, a person is a record in REDCap. But that one really sort of opened my eyes, and I thought, well, you know, it's a big dumb database. It could be you know, a test tube. It could be you know, a project. It could be just about anything, as long as, you know, we just don't go in too specific. So you know, as a result of that, and, you know, people sort of learning it on the clinical research side, we have lots and lots of people using it for basic research, community research, tons and tons of work in global health, and we're starting to see a lot of research operations and now clinical stuff in REDCap. We've got a really cool partnership with our new EHR vendor, Epic. Do you know this? You know, we're moving to Epic. So yeah, I've got a good collaboratory project with this vendor group that services a lot of the electronic health record market in the U.S. We're working some joint projects where we can not only do more at Vanderbilt, sort of in this interoperability space, but we can sort of disseminate that out for others. Brilliant researchers, Swiss Army knife type tools. It's really, really cool to see, the publications that are citing us. One of the things I should tell you before we get into the consortium piece, we eventually started sharing it, but at some point when we started sharing it, people got really distrustful. So new institutions, well, why is Vanderbilt doing this? They're giving it to us, and I heard all the time, this notion that, well, surely they're only doing that because they want our data. Your data stays at your place. Remember, it's the whole HIPAA thing. I don't want your data any more than you want to give me your data or give me access. But so the only way I know kind of interesting use cases, other than sort of listening to informatics administrators at the different institutions, is just to sort of see who's citing it. But it's really cool. There's a lot of great use cases that kind of come in that way. I'm finishing the intro piece here, but just wanted to sort of show you our local instance of REDCap, just serving the Vanderbilt enterprise and whoever we're supporting with coordinating centers and data coordinating centers. Our stats look like this, at least as of about a week ago. So anytime given during the day, we've got 400 to 500 folks in. Sometimes we'll do a big survey. I'll see that somebody's doing a big survey, and we might pop up to 5,000, for a 30-minute epic during the day. But this was not one of those weeks. But you can see, it's a pretty robust system. We're running about 37,000 projects. About 13,000 of those are in production. And you can sort of see down in, I'm going to use this pointer. You can see down in this area. This is actually to your benefit. When I have a laser printer, I've actually almost blinded people before. That's a great question. Stay out of this region. So you can see here that people are using it for all kinds of different reasons, including operational. The dots on the map here. This is where people logged into our REDCap instance at Vanderbilt during that same time period. So you can tell we're doing a lot of multi-center international studies coordinating from Vanderbilt using the system. The main reason I bring this up is because I want you to know that it's a very robust system, and it's really built to support the enterprise, not just individual studies or individual labs. So about 2006. Kind of came to the realization at a meeting that I was at. I was presenting, this new technique that we're using to sort of bring people into the best practices of HIPAA, and a guy from Puerto Rico actually came to the meeting, and he said, my boss told me to come here and find out some best practices. So I'd like to collaborate with you. Now I'd already said in my presentation, if you're interested in this, I'd love to collaborate with you. So this guy called me on it. So I actually sort of said, well, yeah, I know I said that, and I meant it. I really want to do this, but this is going to take me a bit of time to de-Vanderbilt. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell your boss that if he'll give me 5% of your effort for 3 months, we'll make a go of it. And I'll stop what I'm doing, and I'll help you install it there. He got in touch with me about a week later, and he said, my boss says he'll give you 30% of my effort for 6 months if you'll make a go of it. Luckily, it was like a win-win all over the place. I said yes, and then I actually probably got more like 50 to 75% of this guy's effort for a year because it really worked well. But his boss was also a biostatistician, so he was able to help me understand, how to get the exports working with all of the different statistical packages. So we worked on it for about a year. Really, he helped do the export module. Then the next year, we had another group come and say, yeah, we'd like to participate as well. And that group, we had working on authentication, sort of abstracting that out. Then we did 10. I invited 10 of my best friends and said, look, you got to get into this thing. Let's see if we can make it a go and have fun collaborating. After that, that worked, and so we just kind of kept growing. I won't tell you a lot about the consortium because I think what we really want to talk about is the REDCap proper today. But since then, we give it away at no cost to academics, nonprofits, and government agencies. The way we can do that, honestly, is because of the volunteerism. I don't ask for percent effort anymore. I found out eventually that I can't manage that many volunteer programmers. But we do, we do still have very much that volunteerism and spirit within the community. So So we have a lot of consortium members helping a lot of other consortium members on the admin and the informatics support team side. But we broke 2,000 active institutional partners last week, and we added 2 more countries. I'm not sure where the countries are, but it's been a great fun to sort of watch this sort of spread around the world. I'll stop there with the what's old, unless you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. And I do not want to cut into other people's time, so I'll move forward unless there is. Okay, cool. So let's talk about what's new, and I'm gonna break this into 2 parts: what's newish and what's newer. And the reason I thought I probably want to go into more detail here than I might at Vanderbilt is because we may get people here that don't know it. So if all you know right now is, well, there's a screen that does input and there's this screen that does export, then everything's new, right? So we've got like 14 years to catch up. I won't take a lot of time, but I'll just kind of split it up that way. So we've spent a lot of time since the early days supporting validation. So for certain types of studies, you really want to be in a validated system. For certain types of systems, it doesn't matter. And if you know what the difference is, then you know when you need it and when you don't. It doesn't mean that we don't care about every single project. It's if you're doing FDA type trials and submissions, and your electronic system is your primary source, then you kind of need to have validated systems. We've got all kinds of extra logging, going beyond HIPAA to support validation. Record locking, electronic signatures, requiring a reason for changing data. And again, this is really important if you're in the GCP world. And it's stuff that, if you're in the GCP world and you've done studies on paper, you recognize that this is actually the stuff that we do on paper. It's just sort of translated into electronic format here. We've spent a lot of time supporting standards. So this whole go off and spend 10 minutes and just do something, that's sort of a Wild West, right? And we want it to be a Wild West. I mean, we really want it to be as flexible and diverse as it needs to be. But one of the things that I noticed very early on is that usually the template that I would give them to add on to had some demographics. If you're doing a human study, then you probably want to record gender and ethnicity and all of that. So you can change all that if you want to, but you might just start from that. Nobody ever changed it. So I had this sort of idea that if supporting standards, if sort of standardizing data elements, which is kind of important if you're doing more than one study, or if you're going to be sharing results. I kind of realized that again, if it's all the same to people, they'd rather do the easy thing than just go start changing things for no reason. So we started this REDCap shared library back around 2007. And really it's sort of geared around that if I'm in REDCap and I'm creating a project, and if I'm going to do a depression type scale, might as well go over there and check the library and see if it's there. And if it is, it's already pre-coded and you can just sort of suck it right into the project. I have to tell you that when I went to my tech transfer office and my legal office at Vanderbilt and said, hey, guess what I'm going to do next? And it's going to be posting all of these perhaps copyrighted instruments for use all over the world by any REDCap partner. They were so excited about that, and the prospect of getting sued. So they really came down hard on me and said, okay, this is how you're going to do it. So we only do, we have a library committee that sort of gauges what goes in and what doesn't go in. The things that go in are validated instruments. We want to help people do the right thing. But if you're going to use a standardized instrument, it's probably a good idea to do something that's really been validated and scientifically vetted. We also make sure that in each and every case we've got a piece of paper on file from the instrument holder that it's okay to do this. So it takes a little bit of time. So knowing the process, and then it has to be translated into REDCap. So that committee is doing a lot of work on behalf of everyone.
Paul?
Yes?
Could you give an example of an instrument?
Sure.
I mean, like a Myers-Briggs test?
Like the Beck Depression Inventory, the RAND 36. Can't do the SF36 because it's in, they won't do the copyright thing. The BRFSS, the PROMIS, the patient reported outcome work from the PROMIS group. most of the time it is, you know, some validated instrument where somebody says, hey, if you're doing studies and you need sort of a marker for, or a score for depression or sleep or anxiety or something like that, then these 12 questions plus a scoring algorithm will get you there.
Thank you.
Supporting standards again, you know, here's an example. So if you're in the clinical trial space, you know, you recognize CDISC as an important standard. And one arm of CDISC that relates to case report forms is you know, one of their standards called C-. So here's just an example of having something over in the library and then sucking that into your project. But again, it's, you know, you check it out and you'll find that there's a lot of stuff there. Interestingly, once we got enough of those orange dots on the map from the consortium, I stopped having to go beg the groups, and some of the groups started coming to us. Phoenix is do you know this group? This is an important one in genomics. You know, if you're doing genomics type research, this NIH project called Phoenix, they do instruments, and you can see the names of them up there, around you know, standardized ways to collect information about certain domains. They already had a library, and they said, you know, we'd like to translate all of our stuff and put it in your library. And we thought about that a bit and thought, man, that's going to be a lot of work. Why don't we just instead give you a formula and for the metadata in sort of a zip file type format, so that if you have instruments, even including images, we can just send people from REDCap over to you, that they use your shopping cart, they figure out what they want, and then they bring it back into REDCap for a really quick import. That's worked really well, and it's quite scalable. We've done another very large, you know, sort of external library in Germany, in Munich, and just had another commercial group work with us on setting it up. I think that's, I just had this epiphany sitting in a meeting last week where I should have been thinking about something else, but yeah, I had this epiphany that this is actually how I think we're going to go approaching some of the larger networks. So, you know, building a web page for those networks and having the types of domains that they need. This one's pretty cool. But, you know, I'd say test it pretty carefully here, because I'm not sure how well it works in internet bandwidth limited places. But, and the reason is it's sort of a too-hot technical piece to a server that's actually housed at Stanford University. But, you know, if you're collecting, you know, information and you need sort of a standardized, you'd like to rely on sort of a standardized biomedical ontology or vocabulary, like SNOMED for diagnosis, or LOINC for lab codes, you know, those sorts of things. Then there's actually sort of a feature in REDCap, this one's pretty new, a feature in REDCap that allows you to say, hey, I want to collect information in a text box and only allow me to use things that are in this ontology, which is kind of neat. Okay, so we built a lot of stuff. So this is definitely in one of those what's newish and what's newer and what's cutting edge. So we found a long time ago that not only can you give good solid tools to researchers and watch magic happen, you can, if you extend that out to the really smart technical and programming community, then really magic stuff starts happening. So I won't go into a lot of the technical details here. But we built a very robust set of web services, and if you're a techie, you know what that is, and if you're not, basically it means it's a secure way for a program to connect into the back end of REDCap and either get data, pull data, you can push metadata, you can pull the data dictionary, you can pull it back out. You can even, with the latest release, you can create new projects in REDCap. One use case for that, remember I said we do the big data stuff and then we also do the small data. One of the things that we realized in our own shop was that as soon as people find their cohort and their data extract, the next thing they typically did was they created a REDCap project and put it there because that's where it's secure. We just took out the middle man here. We just said, well, why don't we just create a button over here and using system-to-system stuff like this API here. Why don't we just create a project? We know what the data look like, so let's create the metadata. Let's dump in the data. We know who the user is over here. So let's push in the user, and basically, you know, at the click of a button over here, you've got sort of this system talking to this system and setting up the researcher. You can do it for all kinds of different things. Honestly, I go to places a lot, and I found that people have out-REDCapped me in terms of the interoperability, but that's really cool. If this sounds really geeky and unapproachable for the researchers in the group, it's not. If we had good internet connectivity, I would show you a really nice example where I've got 2 or 3 lines of code in an R program. And you know, that R program basically is using this API approach and permitted token to access one of my projects, pull in the data, and then all kinds of beautiful R-related graphs and analysis. So it's not unapproachable at all. And in fact, a lot of our analysis folks are starting to clue in that, hey, this is sort of the way we do reproducible research now. And it's also how we do custom reports and the like. So if you don't know it, look for it. It's way down on the left-hand corner of the REDCap screen if you're looking at your individual project, but it's quite powerful. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, other than I have to spend a little time because it's my favorite new-ish feature. A while back, we realized that one of the huge use cases would be if we've got registries or longitudinal studies, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out a way to map REDCap fields to our clinical data fields through a research data repository, by the way. And when the time is right for a person, a study, a data service, if we could sort of go ahead and just pull in the data to be adjudicated and shoved into REDCap, rather than having people go and open this system and copy and paste. It's been a huge win at Vanderbilt, and we've been able to sort of generalize that into 3 web services. If you can sort of visualize what you need to do, if you have your own data warehouse, and if your technical team can build 3 web services to specs, then we're seeing other groups are starting to use this as well. It's been really, really enabling for our research teams. So supporting trials, I mentioned trials a few times, and actually I pulled some of this slide deck from a talk we were giving in Japan a few years ago, and they were really, really trial-centric. So I've got a little over-representation here. I don't want you to think that we're all just all about the trials. We really are about just everything. But randomization is something that can be supported in REDCap. Multi-center trials, so if I want to do a study and I want to be a coordinating center, then I can have for the same project, I can give Stellenbosch folks access and UCT folks access and maybe Stanford folks access. And they can see their data, and as the coordinating center, we could have people up top that could see everyone's data, including doing data quality checks, monitoring, and that sort of thing. That's the way I like to do multi-center trials. However, sometimes politically, it's not the right thing to do. We're not going to do that because we don't trust this other group, or we want to add a few things on over here if we're going to be doing this study or trial. The beautiful thing about the metadata model is the fact that you have a metadata set and you send it to your buddy over here on the other project, and you know that you're collecting data in the same way, right? So it takes a little bit more change management, but you can do it either way. Particularly with the API stuff, if you wanted to sort of be collecting remotely, and you wanted to use the API and then a little bit of middleware logic, you could still send things to a central repository, and you could control that on either end. Data quality module, this one's really quite nice, and it's not just for trials. Being able to sort of click and click on a tab and see, do I have any known issues out there. We do, out of the box, it does the really, really simple stuff. Do I have missing values and that sort of thing. But we also have a pretty nice sort of syntax for creating your own rules. Visit 2 should be after visit 1, unless it's a female, or, that's not a good use case, but you know what I mean. I mean, you could do really complex stuff. And the really nice thing is that I believe without exception, I suspect you could get too complex here, but I believe without exception, if you define it sort of for auto-reporting purposes, we've also figured out a way to make it fast enough that if you violate one of those rules right now, there's sort of a notification. So the best way to handle data quality is right now, telling people rather than sort of seeing it on a report and then trying to go back to them. For cases where we do see things on reports and need to go back to them, we have a pretty robust data query workflow. And again, if you need that, then you know what it is. If you don't need it, you probably don't need to worry about it so much. But it is kind of one of those things that sort of keeping track and having someone monitoring everything is not a bad idea. So it's not just for trials. Okay, so that's what's newish. Here's what's newer. So in the last 12, 24 months. Lots and lots of new survey features. And I should tell you that a lot of what we do is we don't just go haphazard. Well, we'll develop this one month and we'll develop this another month. A lot of times we sort of go in phases. And honestly, a lot of those phases depend on what we're trying to make sure that we're ready to cover. The survey stuff came about because in the US we had a lot of money, a lot of grants coming in, and we got one of these grants for patient-centered outcomes research. It's called PCORI. So when we got that grant, I needed to go build out a whole lot of new survey functions and features. So surveys here would be, the screen I showed you earlier was a case report form where a data manager might be looking at it. We have lots of extensive functions where we can collect data directly from patients or participants in lots of different ways. So we spent a lot of time on survey features, including one. I know we had a Twitter request for information about accessibility. One of those features is, you can say for this project, for this survey, I want you to put a little text-to-speech reader there. We still have, actually one of our biggest new projects is a precision medicine initiative, which is a US longitudinal study. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is accessibility and screen readers. And we're seeing a few places where we're missing the mark on the survey side. So we've got some things there, it's passable, but I think we've got a little bit of work to do. And sorry, I'm sort of speaking to a Twitter message that I got right before this one. We've got embedded video and audio, again, all kinds of stuff there. We've got this new type of field that's sort of a wet signature piece. And interestingly enough, the reason we developed this is I had somebody at my team looking at electronic consent, which is a real hot topic in the US right now. We've done electronic consent forever in REDCap. Since the early days of surveys, people have been using it that way. But there's some level of formality that sort of kicked in, and lots of different institutions are wanting advice on that. So I went to my IRB, our ethics board, and said, look, what's the deal with these electronic, with electronic consents? And what regulations do I need to be paying attention to? Do you really need a signature, or is somebody typing their name okay? Just typing your name's fine, don't worry about it. They gave me a few ground rules, which were pretty easy, but it just seemed like every other day somebody was coming back and saying, yeah, I know it's fine, but people just feel more comfortable if they're able to take their iPad out and scrawl their name, and so we added this new signature field. So use it if it's useful. We developed a mobile app. So this one, I'll talk about this a bit in the what's next feature piece as well. But a while back we realized that we're pretty lucky in the U.S. and we have pretty good bandwidth in most places. Not always, but not everybody has that good fortune. And sometimes we need to send our folks into places where that we are sort of have poor internet connectivity, and there are plenty of those in the U.S. too. But so what we needed was something that was that would allow us to sort of create for a project, register this as a mobile collection project. We have an iOS version, we have an Android version available in the Google Store and in the Apple Store. You download that, there's some features, and there's a workflow where you turn your REDCap project into a mobile project. There's a QR thing. You register the project by taking a picture, with the app. Thanks. And then you can basically go out into the field with it, collect data, and then synchronize when you come back. It's one of the hardest things that we've ever tried to do because of synchronization. The project might change while you're out in the field, the metadata, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And I think we're about 80% right with it, so if you try this and use it, try to be friendly on it and give us some feedback, and we'll do what we can. This is a cool one, Twilio, so telephony services, so again, sort of recognizing that for surveillance type studies, it's not even, maybe we want to run those in an even more lightweight way. Maybe it's just an SMS survey, or even a telephony survey. So call a number and answer 2 questions, and again, you'll know it when you need it, but if you need it, it's a really, really enabling function, and especially in surveillance type work, I think it's really cool. Two-factor authentication, you can turn that on at the institution level. We turned it on when we started seeing more clinical use for REDCap. I did not want to be on the cover of the New York Times saying that we had these protections in place for our general clinical systems, and then we had this other REDCap thing that didn't. So it's there if you want it, you use it. Again, this one's kind of geeky, so I won't go into a lot of details, but it's important. We then built in a lot of features and functions around what's called plugins and hooks. So at Vanderbilt, I'd say 95% of our studies, people just learn the system, they go off and create it, and we never hear from them. There are some that are quite complex, though. So for those, sometimes they need a little bit of advice, and we have sort of these clinics that we use for support. But for some, REDCap out of the box just won't do it, but it'll do 90% of it. So for that, we have a core team that does plug-in type programming. It's all very secure. It sort of sits within the REDCap environment, and it allows you to customize REDCap. Now, you have to have programmers, and you have to have programmers that know how to build secure things, right? Because if you put a kludgy app over here and it's a security vulnerability, you've done a disservice to everyone. But when you do it right, it's incredibly empowering. And it allows local teams to really go out there and innovate any way that they want. One example of those that a guy at Stanford built and shared out with the consortium is a body image map. So click wherever you're hurting type thing. And there are all kinds of different pieces. Action tags are new. These are ways that you can we can sort of push in lots and lots of new features without a lot of work on the rework on the data dictionary. Action tags are accessible. You just sort of click on that, learn about action tags. You sort of put in the field annotation for text. When you're creating fields like I'm